Welcome. Let's jump right into this explainer. We're going to take centuries of cognitive psychology, human nature, and historical strategy and basically roll them up into one massive, cohesive playbook for life. Because whether you're navigating office politics or personal relationships, the rules of engagement were actually written a long time ago. Which really begs the question, are you actually in control? I mean, you probably think you're perfectly rational, right? But what if invisible cognitive forces and the hidden agendas of other people are literally dictating your every move? We kind of walk around sleepwalking, assuming we have total agency, when in reality, our brains are just riddled with blind spots. So here's our strategy manual for this explainer. 1. The internal battlefield. 2. Unmasking human nature. 3. The art of defense. 4. Strategies of control. And 5. The Machiavellian mindset. All right, Phase 1, the internal battlefield, defeating your own mind. Our absolute first internal enemy is the anchoring effect. This is a super powerful cognitive bias where totally arbitrary numbers secretly hijack our logic. Think about it. If a car salesman throws out a ridiculously high initial price, your brain subconsciously tethers itself to that number. Suddenly, every lower offer feels like a massive steal, even if you're still totally overpaying. And this is exactly how a skilled opponent exploits that very bias. In an anchored negotiation, you're playing right into their trap, just reacting to their baseline. A truly rational negotiation, on the other hand, means you have to actively ignore their anchor. You've got to set it aside, do your own objective due diligence, and know your exact numbers before you ever even sit down at the table. We also constantly trick ourselves into thinking that more is always better. But take a look at this famous supermarket jam experiment. When shoppers saw 24 varieties of jam, sure, a lot of people stopped to look, but only 3% actually bought anything. When they slashed it down to just 6 choices, sales absolutely skyrocketed to 30%. It turns out a massive array of choices just leads to decision fatigue and paralysis. To be an effective strategist, you literally have to limit your options to keep your head clear. Moving on to Phase 2, unmasking human nature, reading the enemy. To survive modern social and professional dynamics, we've got to adopt the mindset of a historical strategist. You have to strip away all that wishful thinking and judge people strictly by what they do, not what they promise. Rely on your own intellect, and most importantly, you've got to worship Athena, the goddess of calculated wisdom and strategy, instead of giving in to the impulsive, brute force aggression of Ares. The really crucial point here is realizing that behind polite office behavior or friendly smiles, there is this hidden, primitive capacity for aggression. As this quote from Sigmund Freud highlights, human nature carries a really deep-seated hostility. If you just walk around assuming everyone is naturally gentle, you are going to get caught off guard. You have to anticipate this aggression so you can actually strategize against it. Phase 3, the art of defense, protecting your position. Winston Churchill captured this idea of the perfect economy strategy beautifully. It teaches us that our time, energy, and resources are, well, severely limited. If you stop to fight every single trivial, ego-driven battle or respond to every little slight, you're going to burn out for sure. True strategy means picking your battles really carefully and just ignoring the barking dogs. So what do you do when you are attacked? Well, you definitely don't lash out. Instead, you use the counterattack strategy. Maintain absolute silence and patience. Let your opponent act first. When they get all fueled by anger or frustration because you aren't reacting, they will inevitably overextend and expose their weaknesses. This is exactly what Franklin D. Roosevelt did back in 1944. He just patiently waited for his political opponents to make total fools of themselves before delivering a devastating, calculated response. Phase 4. Strategies of control, offensive tactics. This brings us directly to Sun Tzu's strategic code. Sun Tzu taught that the absolute ultimate offensive maneuver isn't just charging blindly into battle, it's making your opponents come to you. By using their own desires, their greed, or their pride as bait, you force them to react on your terms. You control the options, you set the battlefield, and they basically walk right into your carefully laid plans. But listen, when it is finally time for you to act, hesitation is deadly. If you leave yourself a fallback plan, you're just breeding doubt in your own ranks. Instead, you have to strike with absolute boldness. Think of the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés back in 1519. When he landed in enemy territory, he boldly ordered his men to literally burn their own ships. By eliminating their escape route, he forced total commitment. It was victory or death, and that absolute focus made them completely unstoppable.
And Phase 5, the Machiavellian mindset, mastering the game.
The 16th century strategist Niccolò Machiavelli famously argued that a true leader has to embody two totally distinct animals. First, you must be the lion, using raw, intimidating strength to frighten the wolves and silence direct threats. But raw power alone is blind, it steps into traps, so you must also be the fox, using calculating, alert strategy to sniff out betrayal and navigate all the subtle, unwritten rules of the game. The key is to seamlessly transition between both.
This brings us to one of the most important concepts, the law of formlessness. The exact moment you become rigid, predictable, or overly reliant on what worked yesterday, you are handing your enemies the exact blueprint to defeat you. You have to stay fluid. Be like water. Accept chaos not as a threat, but as a tool. And crucially, never take attacks personally, just let the hostility of others slide right off your armor.
Because in the midst of turmoil and chaos, your absolute greatest asset is your presence of mind. During the crazy, chaotic Battle of Copenhagen in 1801, Admiral Lord Nelson's superior officers signaled for a panicked retreat. Nelson calmly raised his telescope to his blind eye and famously said, "I see no signal." He strategically turned a blind eye to the panic going on around him so he could execute his own victorious vision.
0. That is the exact number of free lunches you should ever accept. A true strategist despises the free lunch, because anything offered for free usually comes with hidden strings attached. Kings like Louis XIV would use lavish gifts to make his nobility financially and emotionally dependent on him. If you want to maintain your independence and your power, always pay your own way.
So as we pull all these laws together, from overcoming our own cognitive dissonance to applying Sun Tzu's strategic code and embracing Machiavelli's duality, you really have to ask yourself a hard question. Are you actively navigating the complexities of your life as the clever fox, or are you just sleepwalking through the battlefield, reacting to the anchors and traps set by everyone else?
You see, these historical strategies aren't just reserved for ancient generals standing around on dusty hillsides. They are the fundamental, timeless rules of engagement for your modern life. They apply to office politics, high-stakes negotiations, and even your personal relationships. The battlefield really is everywhere. You have to master your mind, read the enemy, and stay formless.
I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. When your next challenge arrives, and trust me, it will you be the architect of the outcome, dictating the terms of engagement, or will you be just another casualty of human nature? Ultimately, the choice and the strategy is entirely yours.